Call to order the Macedonia Planning Commission meeting for May 16th, 2022. We get a roll call.
Sure. Mr. Westbrooks?
Here.
Mr. Chivon?
Here.
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Mr. Wallenhorst?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here. All right, first is approval of the April 18th regular meeting minutes. Anybody have any comments?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we also have approval of the April 18th public hearing minutes. Anybody have any comments on that?
So move again.
All right.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. First we have up is Archer signs for the IHOP. Come up. Good evening.
Hello,
Get your name for the record.
Scott Farnsworth.
We have some comments from staff. Mr. Francis, would you like to go over your comments?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report dated May 1st. The applicant is proposing some signage for the IHOP building that we've been reviewing over the course of the last 6 to 8 months or so. So they're in the final stages and want to be able to get their identification signage. Section 117903 F2 permits 2 square feet of identification signage, which is everything: walls, signs, projecting signs, freestanding signs, for each lineal foot of building frontage. The primary building frontage pursuant to section 117903 C 5 and 6 is the portion of the frontage that provides main access to the building. In this proposal, the primary frontage is the east-facing main customer entrance. This is about 78 feet, which provides about 156 square feet of identification signage. Then, excuse me, 117907B of the code permits a 40 square foot ground monument sign. The proposal provides for 3 wall signs and a ground monument sign. Combined total is 101 square feet. And again, 156 is permitted. Really, the only issue that needs to be worked out, which I don't think is an issue, but the distance from the road right away needs to be provided for that existing. I think you're making use of that existing base that's there.
Yes, the existing base is already there.
And I don't think it's an issue, but it has to be at least 5 feet. So just a simple note on the plans would need to be added just to ensure that
Sure.
compliance is being met. Other than that, I think the plan can be approved as submitted.
And I assume the distance, what do you know what the distance is?
Site survey approved, it was roughly 20 feet.
Okay. All right. That'll accomplish that. You guys have any questions?
No.
Any other comments? I'll make a motion to approve, subject to the distance from the sign from the right of way is added to the plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Easy and quick. Next is specialty lubricants.
Good evening. I'm David Fike with Qualified Builders. This is Steve Kaczynski. Specialty Builders.
Just want to give a quick overview of what's planned.
Yeah, we're planning, or Specialty Lubricants would like to propose building a pavilion on their property in front of their parking lot for employees to enjoy outdoors during the day. And it's general industrial zones. It's 10 feet away from the parking lot, 75 feet away from the entryway. There was acknowledgement about applying a sidewalk and crosswalk from the building, which the owner agrees that needs to be done. It's not a problem. And other than that, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Mr. Francis, will you give your comments?
Yeah, well, these guys made my comments easy. So my report dated May 1st, exactly what the gentleman explained, and I did recommend that a crosswalk be added from that main entranceway to the building, and then some sort of a sidewalk to go through the green space over to the pavilion. I think it's a great project and would recommend approval subject to the addition of those two items.
We've already had the sidewalk clearance.
Great. Yep. Appreciate that.
Let's see, engineer is not here this evening. I don't think we have any comments. Do you guys have any questions or?
I have one.
Okay.
So the sidewalk and the right of way, it's just for the help, it's just for the help,
This is for employees to get from the building to the shelter.
do you think it's a good idea, or it's okay with you to do it?
I think it'd be better than walking through the parking lot. Yeah.
Well, I don't have any, I just wonder why would we thought it was a good idea.
He had mentioned the truck traffic, thought it'd be good to just paint a crosswalk on there, just to make the trucks look immediate. The pedestrians going across. And I wanted the sidewalk anyways, going to the open space, I think it would look nice. Okay, so we have no problem. Fine.
Okay. Well, if we have no other comments. All right, make a motion to approve with the addition of the crosswalk and sidewalk as suggested by the planner.
I'd second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, good deal. And someone mentioned you guys have donated the ATV.
Yes, we did. Well, we donated for half of it, I think.
Half of it or something like that? Let's see, I'm sure they
New
appreciate it.
Rhino.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure they appreciate it. If you probably can get somewhere.
We
Your
enjoyed
trucks
that.
can. Well, thank you.
They give, 1,000 half of your listening services.
Great,
Thank you.
thanks.
We put it to use.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Next is Don Bash Jewelry. You guys have been here before, if we could get your names for the record.
Don Bash. Dustin Bash.
Mark Levin.
So I know, yeah, you've been in several times. I don't know if you want to go over what's changed, or you want to jump into the staff comments, or?
I think it's probably easiest to start with comments, and then we can just respond to those. I think there's nothing there, that we aren't addressing or understand we need to fix.
Okay.
I think landscape is one thing we want to talk about, we'll know of that. And then just, some of the material selection, we can kind of finish with that. That's fine.
Okay. Mr. France, would you like to go over yours first?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report dated April 30th, final site plan review for the new Don Bash Jewelry building. So some of the issues that have taken some time for this site have been related to the variances that were needed. A use variance for the jewelry use, retail use in the business office district, as well as a number of dimensional variances needed to effectuate the plan as proposed. And I know recently there was some question raised by a resident adjoining the area about the variances and what was approved compared to what's shown on the plan. So I think there's some discussion needs to occur just to make sure what was approved is shown what's on the plans. But all of the variances that were,
What variance don't we think is shown?
well, I don't know. There's a question about, and I think the residents here this evening, they can ask that question. But all the variances that were requested, and I can just quickly run through those. The BZA did approve at their March 16th meeting a 47-foot variance for a building structure intended for office use. Rear and side yard 90 was required adjacent to a residential district. They approved a building setback of 47 feet. And then they approved the same, again, for the dumpster. They granted it at 44 feet for the dumpster. The original request was to have it set back 34 feet, and there was some discussion about a 10-foot sort of move of that, and they approved it at 44 feet. And then the 116706E, the setback line for any building or structure erected shall be a minimum of 60 feet from the public right-of-way. The request was for a variance of 13 feet to reduce the building setback from the public right-of-way to 47 feet. That was granted. And then the lot width, as required, 150 feet. The lot width, as requested, at 109 feet was approved. And those are the variances that were approved. And again, I believe there's some question about whether those are accurately shown on the plan. And that's just a discussion for you as the project architect with the commission. But the variances were approved. So just to go through my report, as previously stated, and I think you're aware, signage is a separate submittal. So your sign plan you'll need to bring back to the commission. Photometrics shown on sheet E100. The city has historically required a maximum 1 foot candle at non-residential property lines and a half-foot candle at residential property lines with no light truss beyond the ownership lines. So there's just a few spots that I think need to be tweaked a little bit. The main entrance to the site from Fairlane Drive reflects lighting levels exceeding 1 foot candle. And then there's light trespass beyond the property line into the public right-of-way in that case. Light trespass also occurs at the north and south property lines. So a revised plan needs to be submitted that provides 100% cutoff at all the property lines. Additionally, the lighting level at Fairlane Drive entrance to the site needs to be reduced. I think it's fairly easy fix to.
We just need to select some different fixtures and turn some poles.
I would agree. It's an easy fix, just needs to happen, that's all. The landscaping, we can talk now or come back to that. I know you said you wanted to talk about landscaping.
Let's go through, yeah.
So I do believe some additional landscaping is needed to screen neighboring residential and to provide some landscaping along State Route 8. So I think back previously that there was a mound, and maybe I'm thinking wrong, but I thought there was some mounding along the north side at one point.
The neighbors to the north asked us not to mound
Oh,
because the water comes off their property towards us, and they were afraid the mound would stop the water on the property. So that's why we pushed the basin up there and we're just doing some planting. So anything that flows out of their property and not be held on their.
can you mound on the north side, along the north side of the 12 spaces on the north side of the heavy-duty asphalt pavement access area? I just feel it's important to screen the lights. People are going to park there. The lights are going to shine to the north. I think it's good to screen it, to provide some landscape screening there.
I think we have enough. I mean, we got 10, 15 feet there. I think we can get some sort of mounding up.
Yeah, or at the minimum, you could do some low arborvitae, just to cut the lights from going out. I just think inevitably it's gonna annoy neighbors.
Yeah.
And so the first phone call is gonna be to the building department or the city, and then, I think now is the time to look at these issues.
Okay.
It's pretty simple and cheap to do it.
Yeah. And that was also, you were concerned about the ones that are the northeasterly direction too.
Yeah, where you turn that corner and you have some, we have some apples and river birch kind of to the north and west. I thought along those 5 spots, you could do some additional, like you could almost arc some screening just to give some additional cutoff. You show, I forget what locust plantings. You have a honey locust there,
Yeah.
looks like, but I just felt some denser screening in that
Get
location.
rid of the honey locust and put some low arborvitae or something.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea, I think, is just to protect from that light trespass, shooting from cars going.
Yeah.
You know.
We were trying to not touch as much of the existing lands, to the north there, but adding some more will probably help that.
Yeah, and I think you've done a good job doing what you described as best you can, but I do think that just giving some coverage there for automobile headlights would be, I think, helpful. And then it felt just something along the Route 8 frontage, even if it's not a screening bed that I'm thinking, but just some more, just some greenery, some landscaping, just to give just that curb appeal, if you will.
We have some topography challenges over there.
Yeah, I know you
So I
do.
think we'll have to consider something that's sort of low along the
Sure. Yeah, you could do it right along the building frontage. Don't want to hide the building though either, so, yeah. So, yeah, and I think generally you put a fair amount of landscaping on the site. I am not a huge fan of apples, but your property, so I suppose if you want to put them on there, that's fine. And then just be careful with I think you had Norway spruces. They're having some issues with some disease and fungus now, but other than that, I think the landscaping plan's fairly solid. How do you feel about, you wanted to talk about it, are you comfortable with those
No,
changes?
that's exactly what I wanted to cover.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so other than that, I think, again, the plan's, it's pretty thorough, so just adding some landscaping, I think will be, in those key spots, will be helpful. And then the last comment I had, and it remains to be a continuing comment, is the height of the tower. I think we need to really look at the height of that tower as compared to the rest of the building. And then concrete block, while that's not the same as split face block, concrete block's not acceptable in the town center district, but if you could demonstrate that split face block is architecturally significant and comparable to a
Well, it should have
brick.
been split face.
Okay.
And that matches the two buildings that are to the south, that's split up to about 2 or 3 feet.
Yeah, and I know Pam had commented about it, and I think she said,
As long as they had a limestone look.
yeah, I think let me just go to her comments. And I think that's what
Sandstone limestone.
yeah, sandstone looks, yeah. Yeah, so I think if that's the case, then I think it's,
I'll show that tonight, how it
Yeah.
matches the.
so really the only issue then to talk through is the height of that tower, I think, and Pam has commented about it as well.
And I think the building to the south of us has 2 grading roofs, corners, and those reach up about 25, 30 feet. And we want something that sort of gets up in that same area, so we can be noticed. And that's kind of what's been setting our tower height.
Okay.
We don't want to be blocked by them below.
Yeah.
But we also did lower it about 6 feet from the first.
Okay. And that's all I have.
All right. We'll come back to the tower there. I was just going, our engineer's not here tonight, so just give his comments. A lot of them are engineering review, detailed engineering review comments.
The site consolidation is underway with the county.
Okay.
We're waiting for that. We have the letter on the wetlands. I just didn't turn it in. I think the rest of the stuff was pretty much engineering notes that need to be added or clarified.
Claire, did you have any comments on the site? I guess let's talk about the building and specifically from the house. I don't know if you want to, Scott, you want to kind of,
Yeah,
and maybe Doug does more than anybody else.
I did, so, a couple things that just need to be,
double check some of your elevation tags. They're not calling out the correct height, so you have a roof height of 22'10" that doesn't line up with anything on the plans. So that kind of threw me off a little bit when I was trying to figure out the height, but I was able to figure out, it looks like the main entry to the building is about 27 foot. And then, you're still calling out the tower elevation of 37 feet, and I agree that that's just extremely too tall in contrast to the overall building, it just looks out of place. And then two, if the buildings out front are 25 feet, you guys are still sitting outboard of them, and you're gonna have visibility.
I disagree. I mean, when you look at this tower, it's only about twice as tall as the actual building. I mean, the tower usually is a tower. You want something that stands up. I mean, if I cut it down to this, it's sort of a bump.
I had done where it was about 32 feet, and I think it looks a lot better proportionally. I think if the windows got a little bit bigger, it helps it as well, and some additional detailing on the tower. It just looks out of,
32 feet we could.
it doesn't look,
Okay.
it needs a little bit more, I think some of the detailing you have around the main windows, if you did that around the upper windows as well, maybe the sill.
I think that Pam?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking that we would bring that water table line again and strike, maybe break that elevation up.
I wouldn't do it all the way across, I would just do it just only above the windows,
Okay.
and then directly below the windows. I think
Okay.
that would look fine. And then maybe some detailing on the corners. I don't know if maybe the brick bumps out just like 3/4 of an inch just to kind of give it some detail, especially with it being taller than the rest of the building. I mean, if you wanted to do it on the other entry piece, you could. I don't feel that you have to, but I think just because it is kind of, you're creating more of a signatory piece there, I think having a little bit more detail to it would help it look less massive,
Okay.
so to say.
Yeah, so just accentuating out the corners,
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be anything.
just to give a little shadow line or something.
Yeah, I think if the brick just bumped out a little bit, just kind of created that little detail to show some prominence to it.
Yeah.
The rear of the building, that's the other thing. Are you guys going to put brick on the back of the main entry?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. And then are you guys still using, what is the actual front canopy? Because it's called out to be.
We're going to go to an alcohol.
Okay, great. I think that'll be
That's-
really
yeah.
nice. Okay.
We were having trouble finding something that was going to be good.
Okay.
Awesome.
Perfect. Okay, great. Did you have the colors that you want to show us now? More than happy to kind of talk about them.
I did this just to help as I pull out the actual physical surface. Sure.
If you can hand it back.
I made an extra copy. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. Where is the towel?
It's right. It's right back there.
Go back.
Yeah, that's the one that actually flips around.
Found the same brick guy that has done a lot of the work along that road. This is actually the same brick that Starbucks. Okay. So we use that as our body for the main building. I'm using this as sort of my low red as kind of the front entrance piece, that's darker. The water table would be a wheat stone, which is right there. This is a manufactured stone. And then the CMU that's under it, the split face, is this color, which is opal. It means we go with a changed it up to just a straight black mullion rather than the,
Like that.
yeah,
That looks, I think it looks nice on the renderings, being pops nice and zippy at the beginning.
canopy, yeah, we went to black.
And the black shingles,
Yeah.
those all hybrid nice together.
And this has a little variation in the coloring, so it's not just like
I'm just
cheap
that.
black.
The thing that throw me off, and it could be this lighting, that almost looks like, not,
It's a little more red in some ways.
Is it okay?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and I think the other problem is when you see it with the white mortar mix, it's kind of red.
Okay.
So it's-
That would be my only concern,
Okay.
that does have like a, everything else with black, I think looks really nice and really classy, I think that can throw all that kind of color scheme off a little bit.
Okay.
So as long as it doesn't look brownish out with the actual daylight.
Okay. And then for the roof screening, this system was just goes right around the unit, yeah. So it'd be this bluebird look and this red, that just one body. But they don't show the RWs on this piece.
I'm wondering if that's the low color right now. So it's gonna stick out quite a bit. I think no matter what you put out there, it's gonna stick out, but anything else has a.
Red was the only thing I could really tie back to the building. I mean, unless we just went with, sort of the shadow look, which is more of this color.
I was also gonna suggest maybe just the white, so we can play off the trim instead.
Okay.
I
White was my second choice.
just think that, I don't know, maybe it's like when the back tower, or the back tower pops up. Where exactly are the rooftop units? Are they sitting more in the center? of
They're
the
more in
building?
the center of the building.
That's so I'm struggling a little bit right now. The red's gonna look like just.
Big red things.
Yeah.
Versus white, which looks sharp now, but
I know.
There's one unit that sits here, one unit that sits here, and one unit that sits here. And they're all, I mean, I think 4 feet is the tallest unit, parapet wall is about 18 inches.
That was gonna be my next question, because that's where some of the confusion in the elevations came in, because I see, so like you've got the roof is called out as 17'8", so it's like your actual top of your, is it like 2 feet below that, so it's
Yeah.
really like 15 foot?
Yeah,
Okay, and then I'm assuming the 22'10", and you're gonna call out here was really supposed to be the 27 foot?
Yes.
I came up with, okay.
and those used to be flat roofs, and I think they weren't when we adjusted things.
Yeah, that makes sense. What I'm wondering is, I'm wondering if there's a way.
How much you're gonna see of them?
I know, now that I know that they're 2 feet down, that if they're only 2 feet, if they really are, if they're 2 feet down and 2 feet exposed, I would say they're probably going with a whiter or a color that's gonna match more cornice with the natural. Because I think that'll almost look like an extension of just the cornice piece sitting up there, as opposed to something red kind of popping up out of the middle of the roof. I would almost, if we're concerned about the white looking dirty, which I would agree, maybe even a black, because then the rest of the building does have black kind of going on around it, with between the metal canopy, the storefront system. And then the shingles in the roof are gonna be black. But I don't know. Yes, it does. Brian, throw in.
I think I'd agree that you go with the black. The white over time is just gonna look dingy. The red's gonna look fake.
Yeah.
So the black will probably blend in more. I think it's clearly they'll screen the the unit, so, which is what
Yeah,
we
I think-
ultimately want.
That's, yeah, I agree, and I think, I'd say let's go black. I think that's gonna be a better, I think that's gonna look better sitting up there. That's something, I mean, at the end of the day, it'll probably start to look black after a while anyway, so.
I think the last, this is,
Mark, can I ask a quick
Yeah.
question? Are you doing 4-inch split face block? You're not doing a standard 8-inch? It looks like 4 on the,
it's 8-inch.
is it?
I wanna
Okay.
do I want it to look more like a limestone base than just the half glass.
Yeah. It just looked like 4-inch on the depiction.
Sorry, before you jump in, that,
Yeah.
one other thing I done when I was kind of sketching on this, I even thought to like help, 'cause I also can appreciate why he would bring the windows here. And I don't think you're gonna lose height on any of them by dropping the tower, at least kind of
Yeah.
like what I quickly came up with. I know you've got the counter below there and having that light kind of filter down would be really nice. I was gonna even suggest you could look at making the windows a little bit bigger here if you wanted to as well, since you do have the gables here.
Yeah.
If you were to gable all that on the inside, I think it'd look kind of nice, and then that way it will allow you to get a little bit taller windows, maybe a little bit bigger, that would help. Because right now, just in proportion, like the window looks really small compared to where all that extra space is, so if you could build it up a little bit more, I think would probably help the tower not look so heavy and so off.
Okay.
So that was one of my other suggestions, to just maybe look at make those windows a little bit bigger once you drop the tower and see that height.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. The glass is just, and we're not doing reflective or anything like that, it's just the glass will go to a grade. Helps. Did we hit everything?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
it is vision glass though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, no smooth spandrel, okay.
Yeah, I think we both like kind of the same things. Yeah.
All right, with that, we did have some comments from Mr. Rubeck. Yeah, I don't know if we would necessarily want to go through all of the detail, but did you get a copy of his? Okay, you did not. Okay, so we'll, I don't know if well, I'm sure we can provide you with a copy of it. Mr. Rubeck, I went through a lot of those. I went through with Mr. Gelati, knowing he wasn't going to be here this evening. Do you want to explain the BZA one that you noticed? I think I understand the issue that you're talking about. I think it has to do with the drawing that you attached to the back.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, if you want to explain that, I'll let you see my. So, my 1 days on. It's just 20. Last page on this one.
Yes,
First.
just for the record, my name is Terry Reback. I live at 8250 Harmon, directly to the north of the site, across the street from Harmon. The drawing that I created from a screen print of the, I believe it was, well, I don't even remember which drawing it was, but it was one of the drawings of this corner of the property. Step back here so everybody can see it. My home is right here, and Harmon Drive and Farm Drive are right here. And what I show in pink here is what is zoned residential. The other side, the uncolored area here is the Bash site. It's zoned business office, and of course. BZA granted approval for cash business on this site. They also granted a 43-foot variance to there's a 90-foot setback for any construction from a residential zoned area to any structure on an adjacent site. The BZA granted a 43-foot variance to that 90-foot setback. And, which means the true setback now for this particular site and business is 47 feet. I draw on this drawing, this dashed line, black dashed line, 47 feet from the pink of the residential area. My issue is, and it's actually dimensioned on this drawing, the building is 26.59 feet from that point, which is residential, to the corner of the building, which is here. That violates the 47-foot setback that the Board of Zoning Appeals granted. This curved line here is the actual setback from the BZA. You can see that the corner of the building, this corner of the building encroaches within that setback. The BZA did not approve the plan, they granted a variance. And I brought this up at the BZA meeting when this particular issue was discussed, and I mentioned that the drawing that the BZA was given did not properly show the building on the site with the 47-foot setback. And
I think what happened there was the center line of the road goes from our property to not our one.
No, I'm sorry, the zoning map indicates the entire roadway, entire right-of-way is in the
That's not what was said in the
residential
meeting.
area.
That's why.
It doesn't matter what was said at the meeting. If you're looking in the room here, you'll see that the zoning map follows the property line, the edge of the road, the right-of-way, not the center line of the road.
But that's not how the code is written. The code goes to the center line of the road for zoning district boundaries. When they seemingly follow a road, they go to the center line. So it is from the center line of the road, not the edge of the road or the edge of the property.
The ordinance says 90-foot setback from a residentially zoned district.
Right.
A residentially zoned district includes both sides of the road. I have to strongly disagree with you, Mr. France. I'm not doing this to be argumentative, but I'm.
Let me read you what the code says.
Okay.
Let's set aside the 90 foot. Under 116103, it says where boundaries apparently follow streets or alleys, the center lines of such streets or alleys shall be construed to be such boundaries. So it's the zoning goes to the center line of the road, not to the edge of the road.
But if you look at the zoning map, the zoning map shows.
It's a graphic representation. It's done by a human being on a computer. The text of this code is very clear. It goes to the center line of the road.
Well, would you mind reading that again?
Sure. Where boundaries apparently follow, boundaries being zoning boundaries, apparently follow streets or alleys, the center lines of such streets or alleys shall be construed to be such boundaries. So the center line of the road is the district boundary for the residential. So to one side it becomes residential, to the other side it becomes the commercial zone, in this case, business office.
Yeah. I don't know what to say about it. I strongly disagree with that, but if that's the legal interpretation, then, then I can't argue with it.
Yeah.
I'm going by the zoning map and what it's shown, and it basically says, I believe it says on the zoning map that if it's not shown on the center of the road, it means right of way. I'd have to go back and look at the actual zoning map itself.
Right, but I think you have to remember there's two components to a code. There's the text or the font of the code, and then there's the map, which is essentially an exhibit to the code. It attempts to effectuate the language of the code. The language of the code is very clear. It goes to the center line, it's not the edge. So the R1 district stops at the center line of that road.
Okay. What was that section?
116103? Yeah, because I watched the BZA meeting. Mr. Chairman, I watched the BZA proceedings, and I know this issue came up. Had I been there, I would have explained to him, but it definitely goes to the center line of the road in the case of zoning district boundaries.
We will agree to disagree.
We can agree to disagree, but the language is pretty clear.
So is it in compliance then? based on if it were from the.
I don't know what the center, I don't know what the road right of way is. I can only assume it's maybe 50 or 60 feet. So you chop it in half and that's where it goes to.
It's a 50-foot right of way.
So it's 25, add 25 to the 26.59. And so you're at 51.59. Feels like it's in compliance to me. It feels like it's in compliance with what the Board of Zoning Appeals
We can
approved.
verify that, Mr. Rufek, you know, we look at the exact dimensions.
Yeah, I would, here's the way to have,
Pardon me?
Mr. Daddy give an interpretation.
We can certainly ask.
I would appreciate it if you could, because at the BZA meeting, when we were talking about it, where they,
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, it's based on the road.
Brought up the zoning map, that's the zoning map,
Okay.
that's what.
Addresses wouldn't matter.
Laptop around with that corner.
Zoning map on the laptop showed it, the center line of the road.
Yeah, I just want to know what the, I want to know what the right of way.
I don't know what zoning map he's looking at.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I'd recommend is you just, if you're inclined to approve the final plan tonight, you're going to be subject to, I'm assuming, other, outstanding issues, landscaping, cleaning up the plans, the height of the building that you've talked about. I would just make it subject to, confirmation of 1160-103. Mr. Guidetti can't interpret the code. He can read it and make a judgment whether it complies. He can request the Board of Zoning Appeals interpret it. So it's unfortunate that they did not know that particular code section to make a standing on it, but my suspicion is, based on watching the meeting, they'll concur that the zoning district goes to the center line, but you can always remand it. It could be remanded back to them for formal interpretation as well. 1160-103? No, 1160-103 district boundary lines. And it's pretty typical. Most codes are written that way.
The drawings do show 50 foot right away, so.
Yeah, so it seems like it's over, so it'd be 51.59 to the center line, to the zoning district in that case.
Thank you. And Mr. Rick, I guess just to kind of skim through some of the other issues you had, one, there was, the spelling, they could have that corrected. I talked to Mr. Gilly about the comments you had about the pipe storm drainage, not ditches. It's his opinion that that doesn't really apply here. It's not necessarily relevant. You're not going to use roads that were constructed years ago. If a new development was being put on that, it might apply, but it's his opinion that doesn't apply.
The property just to the south, retail. Major parking problem all the time. They fight theirs for some reason other from the corner. So I created one park 82 to the other side, to the end of their site. But that's not a major issue. The issue, one of the biggest concerns I have is the flooding issue that occurs at the west end of the site, end of Farm Road, along Farm Road. And it seems that because of the height of the building and the nearness of that, it's going to bring more water into the ditch. That is a chronic flooding problem. And part of that problem is not Macedonia's issue. Part of the flooding is because water from Route 8 encroaches into the Farm Drive ditch and causes flooding, which the state really needs to address. And I'm going to talk with the city engineer about that. See, and Mr. John is aware of that as well. But that there are actually three ditches that run into that one pipe at the south end of the property, southwest end of the Bash property. There's a 36 or so inch culvert there. There are three ditches that run into there, and that's always a major backup problem, and I don't know. I don't think that the report from Mr. Gelati addressed that particular concern. And I think, and I'm not a flood expert and, water retention basin expert, but it appears that the engineer for this project only looked at the front part of the site and possibly didn't address the other side of the site, the west end of the site, as far as doing something to help to alleviate the flooding issues that always occur at that point.
In talking to Mr. July, he kind of was simplifying it for me, just to make sure I could understand. Yeah, he said basically now about 40% of the site drains to the west, and about 60% of it is draining towards Fairlane. So with the reconfiguration, he's estimating about 16% of the site draining to the west, so a significant reduction to that west side, sending the bulk of it over to the detention basin, which then drains out to Fairlane ditch over there on that side. So he's pretty confident it's moving a big chunk of it from over there to the east. Now, if there's routing issues and it's dumping a lot of water there, that's he can help you deal with it.
Well, I look at, I'm right there. I've had my basement flooded more than once. Since I've lived there 10 or 12 years, it's probably flooded at least a dozen times. The worst I had, it was 15 inches, which was not fun at all. I lost a lot of stuff.
Sure.
But it has never been generally more than 3 or 4 inches, which is still bad enough when you have, when the basement is finished. And I'm scared that this is going to make the problem worse. You follow what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if he also mentioned that maybe you didn't know, at the north side of the property, it looks like there's a pipe for drainage, and maybe you know more details about this. Yeah, at the north end to try and collect some of that. Underground
drain there.
Yeah, on that end. And maybe, if you didn't see comment, in his comments, he may not have specifically addressed that thing. That doesn't mean he didn't look at it. I think maybe he's only pointing out the things that he didn't find acceptable. So I think, drainage is one of his primary things.
Yes.
He's pretty deep into it. He probably would even, entertain talking to you about it and kind of explaining some of those things. But from talking to him today, he made it sound like the drainage is being dealt with much better than it was in the past, and trying to get some of that.
Since he's not here, that's why I brought it up. If he were here to address that, I would.
Yeah, and that's why, knowing that this is, that a lot of your concern was drainage, and stuff, make sure to talk to him, knowing that he wasn't going to be here tonight. Some of the other issues, there's an issue about you brought up about the dumpster for the other property. I think these guys are going to have to hash it out.
That was the BZA.
Okay.
Meeting, yes.
You brought up the tower. I think working with them, I think getting it down to 32 feet would be much more realistic.
Well, from my background as an architect, I also agree with Mr. Walhurst that it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it was maybe a little bit excessive, and maybe getting it down some, and I think you guys are agreeing to that.
Yeah, I read that code section, they're under the 35 feet now, and the 10 foot applies to the clock tower, whereas tower, chimney, stage, tower, ceiling, loft, or other mechanical apertures. So now that we've agreed to the 32 feet there, the code applies.
Okay. So I guess hopefully.
You just don't want it to look like the the cathedral in Cuyahoga Falls.
Correct, so it's,
Yeah,
we'll see.
yeah.
But we appreciate you taking a look at this, and again, Mr. July, he feels pretty comfortable with it. Agreed that it's gonna be about.
If he's comfortable with that, then I am as well.
Okay, well, great, well, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I know this isn't very unusual, but I do have a very personal and
I know,
strong
you're
interest in it.
right there by it, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Committee, finally getting to you guys.
Let me just ask a quick question. I didn't hear very well. The neighbors to the north, they're afraid of mounding because it'll keep the water retained up there. There's a slope going toward, I guess, 82. Is that right?
Actually, back towards Fair.
Okay, and did you agree or something, you're gonna put a little more mounding or what?
We're going to put either arborvitae or mounting up against the parking lot, so that it's still.
Well, if you put mounding, won't that annoy the neighbors again?
We'll put it here, so the water that's coming off of theirs will be collected into this pond
Oh,
before,
okay.
and it won't, before we showed the mounting up here, and they said, we don't want it that close, because anything that's draining this way will end up staying on our property.
So getting on the other side of the.
Getting on the other side of the
All
pond.
right.
We'll let it get into the.
So when you do this, you've been talking to the neighbors and all that? Yeah, okay.
The pond could actually help.
Yeah.
Here's my last question, which is, you're not here for signage, and I know that, but is there a sign gonna go here? Is that sort of?
Yes.
And the reason for the tower, is there gonna be another
This
sign?
would be on the side of the road.
I just wondered what the point was. Okay. Those are my two questions.
How you guys?
You guys covered it.
So I guess, talk this out loud and then we can talk about motion, but I know, so there's a variety of things, Mr. Francis comments, most of them dealt with, some landscaping, we just kind of talked in, lighting, I think you can pretty easily accomplish that, you can check that. His only other issue was, yeah, the tower height, which is covered with the architectural. We're talking about doing like 32 feet. We talked about the colors of a few different items. We talked about the split face and using, I forget what it was called, but it was more closer to the sandstone look.
Less than,
Right.
it's like paint colors, it's.
And I'm trying to think if there's any other big issues. 32.
Did the just mentioned about watching that brick color is no brown. The screens on the roof will be black. Brick on the back of the front entry. Larger windows on the tower, so balance things out along with more detail on the tower element. And then they did change the metal front entry, the metal canopy on the front.
Well, then if you guys are ready, we'll take a stab here at a motion. All right, make a motion to approve, subject to administrative review of or to incorporate the comments made in Mr. Francis' memo regarding landscape and the lighting. And then in terms of the architecture, a 32-foot tower. Susan, tell me if you're talking too fast.
Dropping the one that's 37 feet, currently down to 32 feet. The other one's an existing about 27 feet.
Yeah, so you get that, sorry, so it's a 37-foot tower to a 32-foot.
Yeah,
The
screens on the roof there.
okay, the screens on the roof to be black. We know what you got. The brick on the rear entry, larger windows, and additional detail on the tower. I think that is all. France, did you hear anything?
I would just say it's subject to outstanding comments from the consultants in addition, just to make sure.
And so any other outstanding comments from staff and consultants,
Which includes the consolidation.
which includes consolidation? Anything else?
No.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. So I mean, it's a lot of conditions, but I think it sounds like they're relatively simple ones.
We've already started working on the ones that we've worked together.
Okay.
And I have issues, so
Okay.
most of this is on the way.
And Mr. Chairman, the intent is it's administratively? I didn't know if I heard
Yes,
that.
administrative.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Are you, from the city, that would do anything about the fact that the neighborhood built on this site?
It's probably a
Something,
building, I mean, like, I don't know, if the building department say, hey, you're hanging over, you need to get on the property. Well, I'm sure, I don't know, I mean, I could probably cite them, I don't think we usually do that like that. So we're citing somebody or.
because if they want to get in the officer, financing,
Most likely,
they're gonna run into
yeah.
because
Well, I'm sure Mr. Roddick's out this week. I think he saw your letter before it came. And I'll be talking to him. Is that something you guys can mention to these guys? Hey, these guys are gonna get started. Let's get your stuff on your property.
Things coming small.
Is this CSU dump? Is it a brick dump thing?
it's
Which is what
I guess not only is it on the property, but it's in violation of 15%.
Right.
So it's, you know,
All the discussions are agreeable.
23 feet.
Yes,
It's long.
yes, they are.
If you talk to him or if you mention it to Mr.
I'll mention it to Bob, so
Roddick. Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is new building located at 7860 Empire Parkway. Is that you? All right, come on up.
Yeah, sure.
Can I get your name for the record?
Yes, it's Russell Clark. I'm with Arco National Construction.
Why don't you go ahead and give us an overview? I know you were the one that was in
Tree clearing.
a couple months ago or something for the tree clearing. So let us know where you're at now.
So, I guess the proposed building is a distribution warehouse center, that's gonna be roughly around 350,000 square feet. Probably hold 2 to 3 tenants, for distribution purposes. And, currently the site has, the trees have been, fallen, on the site, but they have not been removed yet. That's pending the implementation of the scope plan that we had before we can actually remove those trees off the property. Hopefully line up with future demolition of old building pad that was there in the parking lot on the site.
So this is just the first building of hopefully a few.
Hopefully a few, yeah. So the site extends to the east and southeast, pretty far from what Ireland industrial really.
Well, we've got comments. I assume you've seen.
I've seen
Comments. We will start with Mr. France, if you want to begin with yours.
Sure. My report's dated May 6th. So as the applicant stated, they're proposing about a 353,000 square foot distribution warehouse building. The site is zoned general industrial and use is permitted by right. The site's about 125 acres, which is spanning over six parcels, access from Empire Parkway. As stated, there is an existing pad from a previous building that will be demoed and in connection with this project. And Empire Parkway will be extended to service a new building, but the extended roadway will be private pursuant to sheet C1.1, which we'll come back to in a minute and talk about that. So I reviewed this as a preliminary plan. I know you guys are wanting to move quickly, which I think the city wants you to move quickly and get this building built, but we make sure we go through all the code requirements. So I reviewed it as a preliminary plan. It's extensive plan. I've also talked to your civil engineer record and some questions and comments I've had about that. So again, the site is zoned for the use, and one thing I just question if there's going to be any outdoor storage. I think it's common that you see with distribution uses, there tends to be outdoor storage. So just want to make sure it's on the record that if outdoor storage is proposed, there's lots of other requirements that come into play in terms of setbacks and screening and such. Over time, they tend to sort of morph into outdoor storage areas. So just again, I think RG understands that, and they need to make sure that it's very clear that there's other setbacks that be required. And then a very small portion of the site improvements, the very southerly end, is located in Northfield Center Township, and the zoning for that piece of the property is industrial. I don't think that's really all that applicable in the case of this project. I mean, it's a real small area. It's like just a part of the parking lot. So there's, for all intent purposes, it's the city of Macedonia's zoning that will dictate.
The site is also shifting up a little bit to the north, so there won't be any parking down there.
You're shifting the entire site plan?
Not to get off of that and to ship out the street down there. It might shift to the north.
Oh. And so all the parking shift accordingly?
The southern parking will shift accordingly, but the northern parking will end there. We'll add additional parking around the entire, or at least this was a plan in relating to your comments when we reviewed it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see to the north side of the plan, there's dock positions, and that might change to all car parking to add more car parking. Now, where the drive ends to the north for the parking lot, that location won't change.
And it's really to deal with the stream and not so much the township issue. Really, the township issue is a kind of a moot point. I mean, it's
to
a
deal
small
with the
piece.
stream and then also the grading on the site.
Okay.
There's a retaining wall that would be needed there,
Yeah.
and
If you shift it, you can avoid it.
correct.
Okay. Yeah, and I think generally what you just described sounds fine, but when we, seeing it on the plans, I think will be helpful. Okay. And then I mentioned it's 6 parcels, so felt that there should be a combination plat that's submitted with this, combine them all into one single development parcel. We don't want to have buildings and such spanning over multiple parcels. I mentioned at the start of this about Empire Parkway being extended and it's going to show as private. Is that the intent, is that it will be a private drive that comes off of the public road?
That is correct. Coming off the public road, I know the city is planning on repaving part of Empire Parkway. So we've been discussing with them to do our entire portion repaved around the same time that they're doing theirs to make it match up with both sides. So that entire drive will be taken out and replaced up into where the city stops.
Somewhere there'll be a transition area where the city will pick its blade up and stop plowing and you guys will start, or the owners. Okay.
Yes.
And so when the term 60-foot private right-of-way, that's just your intent is to build it similar to the public road standard, or it just threw me when it said private right-of-way. Typically, right-of-ways aren't associated with private drives.
Well, it's still gonna be a two-lane drive, that will be similar to a public road.
But not requested for dedication.
Correct.
Okay, and that's fine, so as long as the record reflects that. And then my fourth comment relates to the building height. It probably conforms, but a note should be added to the plans. There was a rough sort of schematic for elevation, so I'm sure that'll be fleshed out more. It's my understanding you're gonna do tilt-up construction is what the intent is.
Yeah.
And then some sort of skin on the tilt-up for some for appearance's sake.
So typically, buildings that we've done in the past, and IRB has done in the past, it's paint scheme with glazing on the front. And I know this building in particular, not much of it, except for maybe the northwest corner, is going to be visible. And there will be landscaping features out front to kind of block even something.
And do you know if it complies with the building height?
It does.
Yeah.
The highest point will probably be around 40 feet.
Okay.
It has to be under 60.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a variance or something was needed. And then my comment number 5 starts to get into parking. It's the plan depicts verbally in text that there's 5 barrier-free spaces, but just they need to be shown clearly on the plan where those are located. Simple. Section 117111 requires off-street parking spaces, so it's a sheer number of spaces based on square footage. And I depict out in my report, you can take a reduction to the building square footage to reduce the amount of required parking. So I took it to a full 20% reduction, which gives 282,720 square feet that is parking based, which would require 354 spaces. You probably don't need all those spaces. Clearly, you're showing 104, but that's what the code requires. So you'll need to deal with that in some form or fashion. Most likely, it's a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm sure you guys have talked about that internally. So any planning approval would have to be subject to, variance to required parking. We already sort of touched on that small lot, and so landscaping generally will need to be provided, a comprehensive landscape plan. And then that small lot to the north, it sounds like it's going to shift, and so just attention to the landscaping to screen that and will be important. And then that kind of skipping over comment 8 goes to comment 9, which is that parking lot in the back. You did show a retaining wall, and so I was looking for details and more information about that. But that may shift, eliminating that retaining wall and less impacts to the stream, which is probably good. Which generally brings me to we'll need some documentation. I'm sure you guys didn't get this far down the rabbit hole without having your plans submitted to IPA and Army Corps of Engineers. You mentioned tree falling, which is good. You probably fell those trees right before March 31st. They're sitting there waiting to be grubbed. You need your approved SWIP plan and carry that forward to be able to do that, which is all fine and good. I think you also probably need some sort of letter from Fish and Wildlife at the federal level about your tree protection and bat species, but that's on you to figure out between you and the Corps. But you will probably need to address that as well. And then going back to comment number 8, just generally it was difficult because the scale was a 1:80 scale, so it needs to be like a 1:60 scale to be able to accurately, depict these. I know you have separate sections where you show blow-ups of the parking, but on a single sheet, do like a 1:60 scale and capture it all to scale. And And then just need to confirm the parking spaces are provided at 10 by 20, which are required by code. Because it looked like it might have been something different on sheet.
I believe they're shown
C3.
as 10 by 18.
Okay, and the code requires 10 by 20.
Correct.
So if you can't meet the 10 by 20, you'll have to seek a variance then.
Right.
So that'd be 2, just for the record, that you potentially would need then. I mentioned, the project, obviously you guys are aware of this, hampered by numerous easements. I made my best attempt at color coding all those easements, which was a fun Friday night into Saturday. You have lots of issues there, but I'm sure you guys are aware of that and you're working through all those.
Right.
Either you're vacating those, realigning those easements and the appurtenances that are part of those easements, you're dealing with all that. So at some point, we'll have either a document that shows approval of all those relocations or something that allows the impacts into the easements. And then sheet 3, C 3.0 illustrates 39 loading docks along the west building elevation, 11 along the north. But sheet A5.10, the architectural plans seem to indicate about only 21 docks on the west elevation and none on the north. So I just think getting those plans to coincide and work together. Is it 39 docks? I'm assuming it's the larger number.
So, well, the docks to the north will probably be removed to add more parking.
Oh.
So it'll remain, the docks to the, I guess, south or the west of the building are going to be remaining.
Okay. And the intent is to build, the building's going to be built a shell all at one time, and then you'll build out the interior based on tenant demands, or maybe there's already tenants identified?
So I don't know the tenant situation currently, but that's typically the process is build the building, and then that starts to attract tenants at that point. Once they see construction underway, then that's the best time to add, is once you start construction.
Yeah.
That way you're not too far down the rabbit hole if there's something that someone wants or doesn't want, and then build it.
Sure. And IRG will be the owner?
IRG will be the.
Yeah, so there's tenants lined up would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't spend this kind of money to not have something lined up. So that's good. So just make those plans just need to jive, and ultimately you're having a number of changes that will need to be reflected in a final plan.
Right.
Preliminary plan approval at the City of Macedonia is fairly sort of conceptual plan approval that says it's zoned right, generally the footprint's acceptable, and the devil's in the details to get to the final plan approval.
Right.
And then things like photometrics plan, getting detailed landscape plans, and then approvals from Army Corps, EPA, whoever the approving agencies, Fish and Wildlife for those impacts. These folks will need that before they issue final plan approval, or they'd issue it if they were inclined to final plan approval subject to those, but before you can get your final building permits. And the city may be inclined to issue a foundation only permit, but I would hesitate that yet until we know where that final footprint is going to be.
Correct.
So that sounds like it may shift.
To the north slightly.
To the north slightly. So generally, I felt, the plans are comprehensive, and they're certainly for preliminary plan approval. Would recommend approval subject to these outstanding comments, and then, work through to get to the final location and final plans and all the details. Oh, and then if you could, when you submit a hard copy, if you could have them staple that would be great.
Oh,
Yep, thank you.
Fire? Yes, I do. You're planning 3 different buildings on it, on the property site?
so currently we have one, but it down the road is still subject to.
Any idea of some kind of global access that's going to be? What it's going to look like, hydrant-wise? The building you have right now, it's going to require 2 accesses for the fire trucks.
Okay.
And we would prefer access all the way around.
So you would want more than one.
Right now, it's a dead end hydrant.
Mhm.
And close to that dead end hydrant, there's also a well on the property. I believe it's a gas well,
Okay.
so. Not sure what has to happen with that gas well or if it can stay. But just the size of the building that you're planning on right now, it's requiring two entrances, two accesses for it.
Okay.
And with the first building built, we prefer access all the way around it. So when you're in a hurry, it's tough to back up that 40-foot long truck.
Right.
So, and then whatever else you can come up with for the sprinkler system and
Okay.
plan on having anybody be in there. So sprinkler system is going to be over and above.
Typically, we have an ESFR system in there, and then there's going to be a portion that's going to be over 40 feet.
Similar to with corner chamberlain, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Other than that, yeah, it's future layout with hydrants, that'd be with Cleveland Water. That is a 12-inch main only, right there. So I'm not sure, I know they've done hydrant work up there recently, like 8 years, 5 years. What size they worked on then, what's in there now, or if it can be looped from somewhere else.
Yeah, I think a lot of times with buildings this size, we'll end up if there's not enough pressure that we're getting off of the city, we'll come in with a fire pump and then do the pressurizing around the building.
That's all I got to cover.
All right. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, are you gonna be able to give full access around the building, given the wetland and stream impacts? I don't feel like you can achieve it to the east.
So, yeah, that's something that we'll have to look at. See
Yeah.
if we can get full access. Does it need to be paved access or like a stone road around that?
Preferably paved.
Yeah, they probably won't be able to get it with their wetland impacts. So I don't know if there's any latitude in the fire code to allow something otherwise, but I
didn't get a full size of a good picture of the full
Oh,
size plan
yeah.
for future buildings.
yeah.
You know,
Oh, and so maybe if there's future access, there's
the building he's got now
has
required
2 access points.
2 access points.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it's even like a working document with the fire department. Maybe it's not something we're necessarily approving, but if you have a overall site concept, you could work with the fire department, that might be, so they can see what they're getting into, what can work.
Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Yeah, even if they're not asking, and knowing that they
That would
could
be good.
change.
Right.
But if there is an overall concept, it might help with some of the planning. Anything else?
That's it.
Related to that, where are you gonna expand for the future phases? How they get coming in off that road?
So the original intent is to have them come down off of Empire Parkway and then along the north side, there's going to be a road that in the future extends off of what is shown here. It would be the dock apron or the
I guess that thick road there between the parking and the docks is where you would get to the rest of the
is where you would get
future buildings.
to the rest of the future buildings, and then also down from the south, that where the
Down to the
parking
bottom
lot.
as well. And we talked about this when you guys did when you came in for the trees, that, that intersection up there of Empire and Highland is set up for a signal at some point. probably gonna have enough back there. And maybe it's not until you get up and open and running. It's the only people that are gonna be hurt by having bad access up there is your tenants.
Right.
You know, you could do some what ifs beforehand, guessing what it might be, and see if it would be a signal or, you know, if the signal is justified, or wait till they get in and see what it's like, and it doesn't start, you know, get enough trust truck. Maybe it triggers the need for it, but that's something that's required for the future. Necessarily require anything at this point. But you guys think it's time? Okay. It's quite small, study this is going on. Got the engineer's comments, looking through his real quick since he's not here. He mentions the state and federal regulations of the wetlands and the RSD. Have you seen his comments?
I have.
Okay. Got connections, storm management report, storm sewer pipes, some conflicts, utility conflicts potentially. Easements he talked about. He mentions the parking spaces again. He mentions the fire departments, you know, will be approved hydrant locations. If you see these, but these all look like detailed, you know, nothing we necessarily need to talk through here tonight, but they will all need to be addressed. And then lastly, I think we've got comments from city's architectural review consultant. I think the general feeling is that even though it is kind of hidden back there, you won't see hardly any of it from Highland Road, if anything. The building is just kind of, you know, boring, doesn't have much of a look to it. Have you seen Pam's comments?
I haven't seen your comments.
Are you guys open to doing some?
So that is something that I know the IRG is very particular about their look of their building and the colors that go into it. I think the original intention was to, for the windows on the front, add a lot of glazing there, especially on that north west corner where you first come in and see the building. It's got glazing on both sides, and then the colors themselves and the panels being colored differently. The intention is to give it some depth to the overall view, and having the parapets stacked and stepped also give it some different three-dimensional qualities.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if we need to beat it up too bad or anything. I mean, I think you're coming back with some significant changes on the site plan. I hope that they would look at some of these things. Scott, is there anything that you saw?
Yeah, I would just take,
particular?
I would just take some of these comments, like, you know, the building you guys just built down on Twinburg Road, I think looks really nice. And I think implementing a good amount of what was done there on this building will look really nice, especially since then it's going to become part of a bigger development back there. Making that look all nice and consistent, right, I think would be a really nice attraction back there.
So, yeah, I know that was done with a different client that basically the building itself is called Cornerstone because it was their kind of idea of the finishing touch for that development there. So different client have different, I guess what they see as needs and service different clientele as well. So that's the only comment that I have to this. I'm taking all these back to IRG to discuss.
Yeah, I think just implementing some of them, even if not all of them. I mean, especially if you are going to have different tenants on there, I think providing some additional breakups along that facade would be a good idea, and definitely give it a little bit more of an appeal than what we've seen today.
So I know also to give a better visualization of how this looks, we'll have 3D renderings down the road to go along with this. I can also give some examples of buildings that are similar to this with the actual views, because I think on It's at such a big scale in person that although it doesn't look like a lot of glazing on the front, there's quite a bit of,
I don't
glass
think
features.
in the elevations you guys provided us, there wasn't anything except for on the one corner. There's no additional glazing kind of going throughout or down the elevations.
Mhm.
So I think providing that would be helpful for us to see and understand, so.
Okay.
And what are the buildings that you have that can be looked at that are similar to this one?
So I will get some examples from IRG.
Okay.
Because it will have the same color scheme, which I think will also help, a lot and be able to share those. I think they turned out pretty well, especially in person. I don't know if these, elevations do justice for, seeing in person.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we hold you to necessarily the standards that you would if you're at the corner of 82 and you're right out there on the main state route. This is hidden back there, but it is the first building you're going to see as you go to this whole development. You know, the attractiveness of that brings people in to want to be in the other buildings.
What goes east of that too, and that big one now that you guys don't know, maybe there's something there.
That's what my concern is that you've started to open a whole new gateway to another area back there, and I think getting that right is gonna set it up for success for the rest of the way.
I was thinking of one of the tenants there, we talked to somebody to claim that they own 10 acres behind the building that they just moved into, the one that's right after Solar's there. So it's all wooded now, but if that is accurate, then they might clear it and build stuff, and then that makes your building more exposed, so.
Right, that's my concern, when the exposure starts to look like this and get more developed around that area.
Joe, you got anything? Tony? So I think what we're thinking of is like a preliminary approval, which, like Mr. France says, it's not a real solid, like, hey, this is the plan moving forward. You're in the right track. Except the zoning is appropriate. Building of that size, we're okay with, but there's a lot of detail that's going to have to be worked out.
Can we give a preliminary, or just given the fact of the fire department issue and moving access around the building? I mean, I know, because that could change substantially the entire building and site, and I don't have a problem, I just want to make sure we're not.
I think
You can give them a preliminary.
Okay, that's fine, I just wanted to ask.
They're gonna have to work through the fire department discussion and provide sort of a potential phasing plan. At the end of the day, if the Army Corps doesn't grant intrusion into those wetlands, and I don't know the quality of those wetlands, I haven't seen a report, but if they don't grant approval into that east side where all those wetlands are, then, you know, you can't get it.
Right.
And so, you know, access can be provided a different way, and I don't know if the fire department has seen, have you seen that? So
That's the plan that he wants, yeah.
yeah, so they just, you know, copy that and start talking through, because that does provide some more future access. Yeah. I think you can issue a preliminary approval for it, subject to.
I'm completely fine with that.
Well, make a motion for preliminary plan approval subject to the comments contained in each of the consultants' memos, as well as the comments from the fire department. For a second?
Second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and you know, don't wait till, I was suggesting is, don't wait till you go to make a submission to you know,
Right.
you know, talk to the fire department, talk to the different departments. You know, you may already be doing a lot of that, but don't wait until you get to the next meeting or something to find out, oh, he really needs to have that room around. We'll go on smooth. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the last issue on the agenda. Anybody have anything? Someone make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
All right.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.